Happy Friday morning, everyone. Anyone have any questions before we start today? Someone did ask me a good question on Wednesday. I thought I would share it. You may have noticed that the courseworks are on Moodle already. So there's a draft of coursework 1, 2, and 3 on Moodle already. Those are the courseworks we will be using for this semester. There'll be some small changes to them, but the idea is still the same. I'm probably going to add some more details to them, but generally they're going to be the same, except for coursework 2. So coursework 2 is a data visualization exercise, and I'm probably going to change the data set that we analyze. But otherwise it will still be the same coursework. Does that make sense? So you can look at those courseworks to get an idea of what's coming in the module. This is a QR code that is used for attendance. Please scan that and record your attendance. There's a copy of this also on Moodle. So if you want to download the copy on Moodle, please feel free to do so and scan that to record your lecture attendance. Any other questions before we start today? So today is going to be unusual because you have to do something. Usually you just sit, you sit down, you get comfortable, you get your phone out, and you start to fall asleep. But today you're actually going to do stuff. You're going to do some active learning, as opposed to, anybody know what the counterpart of active learning is? Anybody? Passive learning, yes. So instead of our normal passive activities, we're going to have some active learning, active activities. I guess passive activities is kind of an oxymoron, isn't it? Passive activities. I guess. Yeah, anyways. So who here has ever been in a meeting before? Really? Huh?
What kind of meeting?
Any meeting, like a meeting with a supervisor or a boss or something like that. So a lot of you have never been in a meeting before, it looks like. Okay, for those elite attendees that have been in meetings before, have you ever wondered, for example, have you ever left a meeting and thought to yourself, I have no idea what to do now, or I have no idea what to take away from that meeting? Has anybody ever had that experience? Exactly. Have you ever had the experience where you're on your way to a meeting and you have this feeling of anxiety because you don't know if you're prepared for the meeting? Like, what am I supposed to do to be prepared for this meeting? Like, I don't know if I'm even prepared. Anybody have that experience? Yep.
I get it every day.
Who were you meeting with?
Project conference.
Okay. At a university or at a company? Industry. Yes. If you have any industry experience, you're going to be very familiar with these. Very familiar with these situations. Have you ever been in a meeting and it drags on forever? It seems to like never want to end. Yep. This is a more advanced question. Have you ever been in a meeting and you've had this thought in your head, didn't we talk about this already? Didn't we talk about this before? Yes. So those are chaotic, probably most meetings by default. If you have no plan, if you don't have a plan for your meeting, it's probably going to be chaotic, unstructured, and yeah, not very constructive. So today we're going to discuss how to have constructive and productive meetings, especially with your supervisor, because you have to find a supervisor, right? And you have this short time to meet with them, most likely. And you want to make the best of that time. You want to have a plan. You don't just want to show up and be like, I'm here, let's meet and talk. That's not a good plan, actually, for a meeting. You run into all sorts of problems. So it's very common to leave a meeting and not know what to do. You're walking out of the meeting and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing, actually, right? It's easy to arrive unprepared for a meeting, right? You don't know how you should show up, what you should do before you show up. Oh, here's one. Have you ever left a meeting and had no idea when the next meeting is? And then what happens? What happens? It turns into a nightmare, right? Because you send an email saying, when is the next meeting? And then the supervisor sends one back the next day. It says, oh, Tuesday at 1 p.m. And then you're like, oh, I have a lecture at Tuesday at 1 p.m. You send an email back, sorry, I have a lecture and you just end up sending 25,000 emails back and forth just to arrange the meeting time. Like, talk about ways to drive me crazy. Okay, have you ever arrived at a meeting and completely forgotten what was talked at the previous meeting? What was discussed? That's a good one. Yeah, that's a really good one. Have you ever been in a meeting and then gotten lost? Like, oh, what are we talking about? Definitely. And this one I already asked. Have you ever been in a meeting that runs overtime? And this is what I call like the circular kind of meetings, where you talk about a bunch of things, then you come back to the beginning again, and you come back to the beginning again. Anyways, if you haven't experienced this yet, you will experience this. I'm prophesizing to you. I'm telling you right now, you are going to experience this in the future. Guaranteed. Yeah. But there's a solution, right? There's a solution to this problem. It's called Bob's Minutes of Meeting Protocol. Right? That's what we're going to look at today, right? So Bob's Minutes of Meeting Protocol gives your meetings a structure. It's not a random conversation anymore. Your conversation has a structure, a path, right? A plan. It consists of 3 sections. Topics discussed, the progress since the last meeting, and then the to-do list for the next meeting. Right, so you have 3 things to document, basically. You can see how this is going to solve a lot of problems. And then each meeting starts by reviewing the previous minutes of meeting, especially that to-do list, right? So the minutes of meeting protocol establishes continuity and memory of the meetings, so you don't forget what you talked about in the last meeting. And then it also facilitates decision making. You're constructing a to-do list, right? What do I have to do after I leave this meeting? What do I have to do when this meeting finishes? So you have to make serious, concrete decisions. Like at the end of this meeting, before the next meeting, I must find a supervisor, or I must choose a research paper, or I must enroll on this module. Like there are concrete actions that you have to take, right? So there's a to-do list for each meeting. By the way, there's a copy of this on Moodle, the minutes of meeting protocol. Huh?
We can't accept.
Oh, what does it say?
Okay,
It says
has to be
like,
nine.
let's see. It should be, is it, it's right here, no? You can't access that one?
Yeah, this one is good.
Yeah, that's the one we want to access. Can you access the,
Sure.
this one?
No.
Really? What happens when you try to access it?
Google said access denied.
Access denied. Oh, okay. That's not good. Anyways, let's concentrate on this one for now, and then I'll try to fix that in a few minutes, yeah? So the minutes of meeting protocol components. So there's a date, you write down the date and the start time of your meeting. You write down the name of each person present. You can also write down the name of each person that's absent if you know who that person is. You have a list of topics discussed. You have a list of progress, so the things that you were able to accomplish since the last meeting. And then a to-do list, things to work on before the next meeting. Right. And the date and time of the next meeting. Does that make sense? You can see how writing these things down solves all those problems we just talked about. If you think it's simple, it is simple. It's a simple exercise, but it happens to be incredibly important and incredibly effective. This is what it looks like when you do it, right? You have the minutes of meeting, you have the names of the people there, you have the date, the start time, the end time. Look, you write down, you have a discussion about the date and time of the next meeting while you're at the meeting, right? Then you have a list of topics discussed. You have a list of progress since the last meeting. Each item is associated with a name. And then you have a to-do list before the next meeting. And each to-do item is associated with a name, somebody at the meeting. Does that make sense? It's very simple, but it's ridiculously important and ridiculously effective. It avoids all those problems we just talked about. And when you have a bunch of meetings, like a series of meetings, you end up with a list like this of minutes of meeting protocols, right? One file, for example, per meeting. And you have a complete history of your projects, which is also very useful. Like sometimes I'm in a meeting and I say, we talked about this 1 year ago. 1 year ago, I'm sure we talked about this. And boom, we can go to that list and click on the minutes of meeting to find out if I'm lying or if it's true. That's really happened, by the way. And this list can be really, really fun. You know, I've supervised students that, like, from the third year project to the master's project to the PhD, we have one long list of 20 years. And it's really fun to look back through the list. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. A lot of you are thinking, my supervisor doesn't use this minutes of meeting protocol, and that's true. Your supervisors are not going to use this, but that doesn't mean you can't use it, right? There is one thing I can tell you about your supervisor ahead of time that's a universal principle. Imagine you show up to your supervisor's door, right? You say, I'm here. Guess what your supervisor is thinking? A mind reading exercise. Anybody have any ideas? When you show up and you say, I'm here. Guess what your supervisor's thinking? I know what your supervisor's thinking, and now you're going to know what your supervisor's supervisor is thinking. Anybody have any idea? Name?
Ben.
Ben.
Who are you?
Assuming he knows who you are. Assuming you've already had a meeting and he knows you're coming and all that stuff.
Where do we land? Where do we land?
That's very close. That's very close. He's gonna be thinking, what progress did you make? Like, that's what he's gonna be thinking. Tell me your progress. Like, that is the thing that they're thinking. Please tell me your progress, right? And then you're ready. You're ready because you've already prepared for the meeting, and you're gonna say, guess what, supervisor? I have my list of progress here. And they're gonna be like, oh, who sent you from the heavens down here? Like, who are you to come in here so prepared and already be reading my mind? Like, they're gonna be shocked. Like, it's just gonna be a shocking maybe you'll see the like smoke coming out of their ears and stuff. Anyways, that's what they're gonna be thinking, right? My supervisor doesn't use this protocol, but you can still take those notes. You can ask, you can say, okay, I'm writing down my to-do lists. I've written these items down. Do they sound okay to you? And the supervisor will say, okay, that sounds fine. That one sounds fine. That one, no, we need to discuss that one. And here's a new one to add, right? So you can solicit the information. Anyone can keep a list of topics discussed, right? You use a phrase like this. So just to be clear, this is my to-do list before our next meeting. You can say that to your supervisor, right? And get this protocol working. And before you leave, you just ask, when is our next meeting? Right? You can ask for this information, right? And look, this is the progress I've made since our last meeting. If you say that phrase, like, you're just going to shock, you're going to feel like an earthquake in the room. Your supervisor's going to be so happy. Like, wow, who has sent this student here? Like, where do you come from? What's your background? What's your training? Right, and this protocol avoids lots of painful email back and forth, right? Because you solicit all the information in person before you go away. Any questions about the minutes of meeting protocol? Okay, you can find a copy of the protocol on Moodle. You can just Google Bob's Minutes of Meeting protocol, or just find it on Moodle, right? Okay, so let the active learning begin. So we're going to practice the Minutes of Meeting protocol right here, right now. You're going to have your first meeting, and you're going to follow this protocol. So everybody is going to form groups of 4 to 6 students right now. The group is going to start a Google Doc, right, and write down the Minutes of Meeting protocol. So you're going to write down the name of each person at the top. In the topics discussed section, you're all going to introduce yourselves. You're going to say, hi, my name is, right? And then you're going to discuss the following 3 questions. What is your greatest achievement? What's one thing you'd like to change about yourself? And what is something you would like to learn in this module? You're going to answer those 3 questions for each person in the group. Put it in the topics discussed, right? And then you're going to think of 2 real to-do items for each member of the group to do within the next week related to your studies, right? You all have a lot of things to do, right? So you're going to think of 2 concrete things to put in the to-do list, right? And then you're going to share the Google Doc with myself. There's a share function, and you're going to share it with rlaramee at nottingham.ac.uk. And then And then the second half, in the second half of the lecture, I'm going to review some of these and tell you what you did right and what you did wrong. Does that make sense? Does that sound exciting? It is exciting. It's because it is. It's very exciting. Any questions before we start? I'm going to start splitting people into groups. Yeah, it's going to be really, really spontaneous. So, you four are good. Yeah. You five are good. You four are Okay, there was a question. Each group makes 1 minute of meeting file. 1 minute of meeting file. You don't want to create 300 minutes of meeting files. So it's a group meeting, right? It's a group meeting and it looks just like the example that you saw. After I form the groups, I'm going to upload the slides.